Hi guys, welcome back. I'm Ginny and this is the Big Sew Along, and I have just a quick video for you today because I was out of town for a few days visiting my BFF in Chicago. It was freezing cold, like it is all over the place right now, at least in the northern hemisphere. But yeah, that means I didn't get a whole lot of sewing done. I did make this, which is a potentially wearable muslin of the matcha top from Sew Liberated. I am obviously on a little bit of a Sew Liberated jag at the moment. I have had this pattern for ages, and I just finally got around to sewing it. This is a vintage piece of cotton. I think that I would like this top in a drapier fabric. This one is about 6 inches longer than the pattern calls for. I'm going to make it again in a drapier fabric. I have like a rayon challis. I think that would be cute. I also have a crepe, silk crepe that would be good. I'm going to make the sleeveless version. I'm going to make it even longer because this hits like about mid-thigh, and I want it to be like right above my knee, more like a tunic. Anyways, aside from my fabric choice once again, although this truly was a muslin, so I'm not bummed about it. I really like this, so I'm glad I finally got to make it up. Speaking of Sew Liberated, I have my real Arthur pants almost completed. Wow, that looks really bright on camera. At least to me it does. These are actually more like a beet red. They're dark red. Anyways, I can tell already that I'm going to love these pants. I can't wait to finish them. So hopefully, if I get this video edited quickly enough, then I'll get to those this afternoon. I don't have a table over here, so I put all my stuff on the floor now. I used to sit in front of my ironing board and just have everything right in front of me. And now I changed my setup since I got my new sewing table, and I can't do that anymore. Anyways, so what I did want to go over today though is I promised a little bit more information on the Japanese sewing recipes. First off, let me say I have two places where I usually get these. And they don't have them often, like maybe once a year or something, but I go back and look at them all the time. The first one, of course, is Nani Iro, which I'm going to leave a link below to the pattern page of her website, and I'm going to put a picture up here. It will look something like this. It will actually look exactly like this when you go there. And each of these little pictures, if you click on it, you'll get something that looks like this. Each one of those pictures, so the first pictures are the collections, and some of them are dated, some of them just have names. If you click on one of those, you'll get something that looks like this, and these are all the patterns that are available in that particular collection. You click on one of them and you will get your like little pattern recipe that we've already talked about. But you should really, if you have time or you're stuck in a doctor's office or someplace really boring, search through them because there's some really cool ones in there. I'm pretty sure you're going to become addicted to Nani Iro patterns. So, okay, the other place, and I've talked about this before, is Kokka Fabrics. And again, I'm going to link to this page below. When you click on that link, you'll get something that looks like this. And at the top, you'll see there's a little sewing machine icon that says craft and sewing. If you click on that, you will come to something that looks like this. Now, this is actually the full pattern page, so if you just scroll down, you can see all their patterns. If you want to go to a particular category, they have them listed at the top there with like little icons. There are bags. I honestly don't know what that second one is. One looks like children's clothes, tops, bottoms, and dresses. If you click on one of those, you'll go to one of these pages that has all of those items, all the items they have in that category. If you just click on one of those, again, you'll get your pattern recipe, and you can just send it directly to your printer. Once you have your patterns, You're going to want to take a look at them closely. I went over how the drafting sort of part goes. Everything is written down in centimeters, and you just follow the measurements that they give you. All curves are measured, but they're straight lines originally, and then they show you how to make the curve by giving you a dimension, okay? So once you get that done, you're going to look at your directions, and you're going to see that they're really not all that helpful. What should I do first? You know what I'm going to do? I gave you a quick little tutorial. I recorded a quick little tutorial on how to alter these patterns, because they're all really basic shapes and the altering is really simple. So I'm going to go to that first, and then we'll come back and talk about order of construction. Okay, the first thing we're going to look at is this little dress. And you can see here, this is a little diagram of what it's going to look like. This is the diagram of how to draft it out with all of our numbers. This is a pocket piece. This is a bias piece. And we also have a facing here. It doesn't look like there's a facing drawn out here for us, but if you look closely, it is up here at the top of our drawing here. Okay. So you can see here in this little drawing, you know there's a facing because you can see this little line here around there. These little edges you can see are sort of hemmed, and you can see right here a little pocket, okay? This is assembling the facing. Okay, so in order to alter something like this, you are more than likely not going to need more room in the arm. You may need more room, more width in the body. So if you needed more room all the way through, like in the shoulder as well as the rest of the way down, you would just cut this straight up the middle here and spread it as much as you need. You would spread it 1/4 of the distance you want, because it's going to be multiplied by 4, twice on the front and twice on the back. So say you needed this to be 2 inches bigger, you would slice this straight up the middle and separate it by 1/2 inch and then tape it back together. If you don't need room in the shoulder, and you would more than likely not on a garment like this, because you can see here in this picture, it's already like a drop shoulder, right? So you're probably not going to need much more room there. What I would do is, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but I put a little notch here. This line right here is the bottom of the armhole. What I would do in order to get room in the body, but not in the shoulder, is I would cut it right about here. So about midway through the armhole, like that, and get rid of that piece. Then I would slice this piece up the middle. I would spread it as much as I needed it to, and then I would tape this back on. Now, once you do that, you're going to have to, this is still going to have to be a straight line because it's cut on the fold. You're going to see that your armhole is not going to match, which is fine. You would just angle it like that so that it matches up. Okay? And you do the same thing on the back piece. Now, on a garment like this, if you needed the armhole to be bigger, and again, we're saying this little star right here is the bottom of our armhole. If you need that to be bigger, you could just move this down a little bit. But my feeling is, if you need it bigger, you also might need a little more drop in between the neck and the bust. So probably what I would do is slice it again about midway through the armhole and just spread it as much as you need that armhole to be bigger, like that, and then tape it back together. For something a little more complicated like this actually has a sleeve with an armhole, and this has a button front placket. So to make this wider in the body without affecting your shoulder, you would essentially do the same thing. You would cut this off about midway through the armhole. You would split this up the middle, spread it a quarter of the complete distance you need, and then you would just tape it back together, obviously with a piece of paper under there. And again, you're going to see, I'm actually going to tape this one because you're going to see your armhole is going to be off again. You would take your curvy ruler, and I don't have one small enough for this, but you would take your curvy ruler and just place it at the bottom here of your armhole and angle that up to meet that. And then you would cut that off. That is not going to affect your armhole, your arm side, or your sleeve cap enough to make a difference. Now on this one, if you needed the armhole to be bigger, I would probably just, usually what I would do in that case is I would drop the armhole down here, like by however much I need. Say it's a ½ inch or something. And I would, again, use my curvy ruler just to angle that back in like that. Now you have a dropped, your armhole is dropped a little bit. The other way you can do it is to do the same thing we did with the other one, which is again to cut it straight through the middle of the armhole like that and spread it as much as you need. The reason you might want to do this instead of the other way is because this also gives you a little more room between the neck and the bust point. Now most of these aren't going to have darts, so that usually isn't as big an issue, but you may need a little more room in the bust, like between your neckline and your bust point, and it may fit a little bit better if you do it that way. This won't match up exactly, but you can just trim it off so that it does, okay? In either case, you're going to also need to alter your armhole. I'm going to turn it over this way so it's not too confusing. So the first thing you would do is measure to make sure your length is right. If you need to lengthen this sleeve, you would just cut it right about midway, spread it as much as you need extra length, and tape it back together. Then you want to be sure that the wrist is going to go around, is going to be wide enough for you. If the wrist is not wide enough, if you want room all the way through, you would cut right about here and right about here. So again, you're talking like, you can see that the curve of the underarm is right here. You want to cut somewhere in that curve. Mine is actually a little bit high, but it's really not going to make that much difference. On this, we have increased, say we have increased this space right here is ½ inch. That means you need a ½ inch at the front and a ½ inch at the back. Just like that. And again, you would take your curvy ruler and just angle this out, or trace that out so that it's a smooth curve like that, and then you would cut those off so that it's nice and smooth. And again, that's not enough to make any difference in the way the sleeve cap fits into the arm side. It's just enough to give you a little extra room. Now, the other thing is you may not need this width all the way down. You may just need a bigger armhole and the rest of the sleeve is fine. In that case, if that was the case, we would do, actually I'm going to turn this over this way. We would do kind of straight line this way and a straight line this way. Sorry, it moved a little bit. Spread it as much as you need at the top only. Actually, I need to go a little further. There we go. Like that. And then again on this side, like that. And again, you would just straighten out those curves so they're nice and even. Okay. I'm going to do one more for the top. If you are fine in the bust and the waist, the bust and the waist, but you need a little more room in the hip, I would do the exact same thing that we did before. Only this time I would cut it somewhere between the underarm and the high hip. So we're going to say right there. And then we would cut the rest of it in half this way. Spread it out as much as we need. Again, remember this one has to be it needs to be straight on the front. Center front or center back. So that would go back there. This one would just come out as much, you would add as much as you need here for the lower bodice. Oops, of course. And then again, you may need to put a little piece of paper under here. Like that. This is all white paper. I hope you can see this. And then I would just angle this from the side here right to the underarm. You're going to lose some of your curve, but that's what you want if you need more width in your waist and hip. Okay. For pants, you would do something like this. Let's call this our pant pattern. I think this is a front piece, but it doesn't really matter. You would do the same on both. You do your length first. So if you need overall length, you would want to cut it somewhere in the middle here between your crotch and your hem. Like that. Slash and spread it as much as you need. Now you may also need room between your crotch and your waistband, and I showed you last week how I got that measurement. Cut it right in the middle, right between the crotch and the waistband. Again, I'm not being really particular, it's just somewhere in there. And you would spread it like that so that you get your extra length, okay? Now, if you needed overall width, you would do the same thing we did before, which is just cut it straight up the middle and spread it as much as you need. If, however, and this happens often, you need more room in the hip and consequently also in the waist, because these are mostly going to be just pull-on pants like this. But you want to maintain the shape of the bottom leg. You would cut this off again between the crotch point and the hem, about midway. You would cut that off. You would then slice this up the middle. You would spread that as much as you need. Up there. And then you could just put this right back on. Now, in this case, I would just put it right back in the middle. If it's cut, obviously if it's cut on a fold, you need this to line up with the side that folds. But if it's not cut on a fold, and we're assuming this one isn't, then you would line it back up like that, and then you would just angle that in like that, and angle that out like that, and you would be good. So let's look at these again for order of construction. This is the first one we were looking at. This is the image of our full completed garment. Here you can see the directions for our facing. This is just sewing those side seams together. Then you're going to sew it on around the neck and down the V. And then this is actually the finished edge. So you're going to need to finish that edge somehow. It looks like they have folded it under, but you could easily zigzag or bind it as well. And then there was something else here. Oh, here. I think they're telling you this. So this, before you attach it, you have this little direction here that tells you where to put a loop, a button loop. Okay, then we have our side seam pockets, and it's just showing you where to place them. They're assuming you know how to sew these because they're not going to give you directions for that. They also don't give you directions for sewing these shoulder seams. They assume that you know to sew the shoulder seams before you put your facing in, right? Once you've sewn your shoulder seams and got your pockets in, they're going to tell you how to finish this armhole edge, which is just a folded over edge, and then sew your side seams. This is just a detail of the side seam pocket where they have done some stitching on the outside, and that's just showing you how to do the stitching on the outside. This is a hem. Again, not really super, even if you read Japanese, these are not really detailed directions. They make a lot of assumptions. For the pants, it's even worse. This pair is like the ones we made, like our Japants that we made last week. They give you the draft for the actual pants, and for the waistband, they tell you that you're going to use a drawstring here. They show you how to make an opening for your drawstring. And they show you down here how to sew the little notches in the sides of your pants. But they don't show you sewing the pants, actual pants together. They assume that you know how to do that. Same thing here. This is more complicated. You can see it's got a button front. It's got an actual sleeve. So they're showing you here how to sew the sleeve in. Up here they're showing you how to bias trim your neckline. They're showing you here how to fold over your front facing for the buttons. And they're showing you here, this is top stitching, I think, here for the front. This is just a hem. This is also a hem for a sleeve. Okay, so even if you knew how to do this, not a ton of, I mean, even if you could read Japanese, this is not a really detailed, they aren't really detailed instructions. They make a lot of assumptions. Okay, so you can see that those are pretty simple alterations, but those cover the basics anyways. And most of those alteration directions, I guess, you can use for most of your Tina Gibbons patterns as well, just so you know. The difference is that in Tina Gibbons patterns you may actually need to make something smaller. In the Japanese recipes you're probably not going to need to make anything smaller, although you may. So always check your measurements first. Okay, since the directions are really not all that helpful, I think it's best, if you're having trouble with the order of construction, just to go to your pattern stash or one of your pattern books, and just a printed pattern from like one of the big four in a similar shape is the best way to go. The Japanese recipes are really all very simple, so once you know how to put a shirt together, you're going to know your shoulder sleeves, your side seams, or your shoulder sleeves, your side seams, and your inset sleeves. If you're having trouble with that, especially because their pant directions, I think, are even, the drawings for them are even less helpful, look at one of your patterns and see the order of construction that they use. That's what I always do. I almost always go just to like a McCall's or a Simplicity or a Vogue pant pattern and look at the way they put it together. You're not going to have all the same steps because they're not going to be the same pants, but that will give you sort of a guideline as to how to put them together. Now, when it comes to things like that one top that we looked at in the little tutorial there on altering the patterns, you're going to come across some things like a front placket or a sleeve placket or a side seam pocket that if you haven't come across before, I'm going to tell you that the one thing you really need to have is a sewing book like this one, which I have talked about before. This is my trusty Reader's Digest Complete Guide to Sewing. You don't have to have this one. You need a book like this, Vogue Sewing. I have about a gazillion. So this just happens to be the one that I use the most often. You're just going to look in your book. I looked up shirt plackets, and you're going to come up with something that looks like this. It's going to give you directions exactly how to put a shirt placket together. Once you guys do these things a couple of times, it's not hard. I did this shirt with the directions, and then I did a Nani Iro shirt that was very similar in the collar, and I really just referred back to the directions from this shirt on how to put the collar on. So, yeah, it's just, you know what, you guys, it's like anything else. Just pick a simple one, jump in, and give it a try. They're actually really super fun, and they're easy to change around and to make into other things. And I apologize for such a short video this week. Like I said, I didn't get a lot done this week, but next week we will talk about how I did with my sewing goals for January. It will be halfway through February, so since I've completed nothing yet in February, I will probably be able to stick to my goal of only 2 garments for February. I'm hoping to get to the Sew Liberated Lichen Duster this month. And I'm also hoping to get to, I can't remember what the name of it is. You guys, there's the that one sort of bubble-shaped slip from Sew Different UK. It's part of her Layer Up collection. So those are the 2 things I'm hoping to get to this month. We shall see how I do. All right, guys, until next week, happy sewing. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.